There are several options for creating details in Revit MEP, and in this chapter we're going to examine most of them. But before we dive in with all guns blazing, with the desire to use our traditional drafting tools, let's first examine what we can actually do with our model. From your Startup screen, browse to Chapter 17 and open the file Chapter 17 Detailing. From the project browser, scroll down until you find Level 1 Power Plan and make sure that that is the active plan. Scroll into the central part of the building where you can see a call-out around the electrical switch room, room number 118. In the switch room, we've got a metering switchboard, 3 distribution boards, and some cable tray. We can see this in more detail by double-clicking on the head of the call-out that will take us to our 1 to 50 detail for that room. We're still looking at the model, and you can see here that we already have a section. Double-click on the section head, and this takes us to the section detail. Here we have a 1 to 50 section of the building just showing the electrical switch room. We can see the switchboard, the 3 distribution boards, and the cable tray. We can see the architecture in the background, and the viewport border, which we can turn off. At this stage of the project, what more do we need to add to this? Well, we could tag the distribution boards. Let's uncheck the leader and tag each one in turn. Let's give the section a name that matches the detailed floor plan. And let's call this Level 1 Electrical 118 section. The amount of extra work I've had to do has been minimal, and except for dimensioning, there's probably very little else I want to add to this particular detail. This exercise is a continuation from the previous one, but if you didn't quite get there, browse to your Chapter 17 folder and open the file Chapter 17 Adding Detail Lines. In this file, scroll down in the project browser until you come to the Power section, Sections, Level 1, Electrical 118 section. In this view, we're going to start adding some detail lines. From the Annotate tab, select Detail Line. These detail lines can be used in exactly the same way as lines in any 2D CAD program. We have line styles available to us, and different types of lines, whether these are straight lines, creating rectangles, or a variety of arcs and splines. So let's start with a medium line, and we'll use the rectangle tool to draw a rectangle beneath the distribution boards, which we can then label as a buzzbar. We may also want to give some indication of cables running from the distribution boards to their final points. Let's start with a line. We'll change this to a wide line and simply draw from one point to the next. We can then add radius and add to our line, and another radius bend, and finish up with a line. Click on Modify. As this is purely schematic, the detail doesn't have to be exceedingly accurate. I can grab these lines and stretch them, or use my arrow keys on the keyboard to nudge them into the right location. If I want to increase the number of cables running through here, I can also use the Offset tool, create an offset of say 100, hover over one of the detail lines and press the Tab key. This will give me the offset that I'm after. Let's do it on the other side. Select the 3 horizontal detail lines and nudge them up with the arrow keys. Do the same with the vertical ones. Add some annotation, so from the Annotate tab, click on Text, choose my text style, and put a note in. Cables rise to above, and if necessary, add a leader. Well, strictly speaking, we're not actually detailing. What we are doing, however, is presenting to the reader of our documentation some clearer indication of what our design is all about. From your startup screen, browse to Chapter 17 and open the file Chapter 17 3D Detailing. In the project browser, scroll down to the coordination section and make sure you have the view Level 1 Electrical 118 3D under the Power section open. I'd like to be able to crop this view so that it matches a section I created in an earlier exercise. I can do this using the section box. The section box can be found in the Properties palette for the 3D view under View Extents. Here's the section box, and if I put a check in it, we'll see that we get this blue box surround our model. If I drag the grips, I can start sectioning the building. But I like to do as little work as possible, and there's a tool in Revit MEP that will allow me to section my building right down to the view that matches my section. Right-click on the view cube in the 3D view. Go down to Orient to View, and I'm going to select a section. And the section is Level 1 Electrical 118 section. Select it. This spins the model around and orientates it as if it were a sectional view, but this is still a 3D view. I can spin it around so that we can see as much or as little of the view as we need. This view can be further stretched using the section box. And when we've finished with the section box, we can select it, right-click, and hide in view. The only thing this view doesn't show are the detail lines that I created in my section, which leads me to think that I should have modelled those objects in the first place. The other thing it doesn't have is the annotation. So what I can do here is click on Tag by Category, and I now get a message saying that the orientation of the 3D view must be locked before you can add tags or keynotes. Down on the View control bar, I can save the orientation and lock my view. I now have the ability to tag the elements in my view, just as if this was a normal plan. And if needs be, I can drag those off to the side of the view and place leaders on them. To make this more readable, it might be better if I change this from an attached end leader to a free end leader. Which allows me to make my documentation look that bit more presentable. You can import other CAD details into Revit. It may not be the best workflow, but when you're up against producing some documentation and you have a standard detail already drawn in some other CAD system, it's easy enough to import it into Revit and reuse it. From your startup screen, click on Open, browse to your Chapter 17 folder, and open the file Chapter 17 Importing Details. From the project browser, scroll down until you find Plumbing, Fire Protection, and Level 3 Fire Protection Piping Plan. Scroll into the north part of the building and you'll see a section. Double-click on the section head, and this shows us a section through the corridor of the building. Now what we need to do is create a call-out so that we can create a detail of the pipe hanger that's associated with this pipe. From the View tab, click on Callout and create the callout around the location of the pipe near the ceiling. We'll drag the callout head and double-click to open the view. At this point, we'll need to change the level of detail to Fine so that we can see the detail of the pipe. Let's crop the view slightly as well. So in here we're still using part of the model, but what I want to do now is go to the Insert tab. I've got two options for inserting CAD files. I can link a CAD file, a bit like an XREF, or I can import a CAD file. In this option I'm going to import a CAD file, as I may want to make some changes to that imported object. With the link, I'd have to actually open the link in an external CAD program and make the change there, which may be the option if you're reusing a standard detail that could be used in other projects. Let's click on Import CAD. We'll browse to Chapter 17 and select the pipe hanger DWG. Before I click on OK here, I want to check a few things. What do I want to do with colours? I'm going to turn this to black and white. I only want this DWG to appear in this one view. I don't want to correct lines that are slightly off axis. I know that from my detail, it has lines that aren't straight. And for positioning, I'm going to go with centre to centre. Click on Open. This may be the time when the drawing actually disappears. I'm going to select Do Not Crop View and right-click Zoom to Fit. I should be able to find my imported DWG. If I hadn't known where it was, I could select everything. Click on Filter, click Check None, and find my DWG. And there it is highlighted. I'm going to move this to its rough location, scroll back in, and then crop the view again. If I scroll in some more, you can see I can select the pipe hanger detail. I can move this by using the right-click menu for Snap Overrides and Snap to Center. Let's do that again for the center of the pipe. With the detail still selected, I can click on Bring it to Front. As you can see here, it's still hidden. What I might do at this point is tab select the pipes themselves, right-click, and hide them in the view. This means that I'm left with my pipe hanger detail in roughly the right location for the overall model. As you can see, however, the object isn't the right size, and that's something we'll deal with in another exercise. From your Chapter 17 folder, open the file Chapter 17 Editing Details. This is where we roughly got to in a previous exercise, having imported a standard detail as a DWG, placed it in our model, and then hidden the majority of the line work. What happens now, though, is that this standard detail doesn't exactly fit our purpose, and we do need to change it. This is the main reason for bringing this in as an imported detail rather than a link. Now we have this detail in here, we can query it. Select and highlight the detail, click on Query. Select one of the elements, and Revit will indicate the layer that that object was originally drawn on. There we have the layer Hanger. What I want to do with this detail is extend the bolt that hangs it from the ceiling. The other option I have when selecting the DWG is to explode it. There's two parts to the explode. I can create a partial explode or a full explode. The partial explode will explode the elements until they're back down to the next level of detail. That is, if there were any blocks contained in this imported symbol, we then see those as individual blocks. Or we can do a full explode, which completely disassembles the whole object. There are issues with both. The issue with exploding elements is that they will leave traces of the DWG in your model, which can have effects on the model's performance. In this instance, I'm going to use the full explode. The full explode reduces everything to its component elements, which you should then change to a matching Revit one. Here you can see if I select a detail line, it's now got a line style that is hanger. and in this instance it might be okay. But if you do have a set of standard line styles, then you will want to select these lines, and let's select the chain as an example. I may then want to change those to thin lines. A similar thing occurs with the filled region. If I select the filled region, you can see from the Properties palette that it has a name pipehanger.dwg-1. I can change it to match one of my standard solid fills. And I'm now ready to start editing the rest of the detail. Create a crossing window through the bolt and the nut, and then click on Move. We can move this vertically up through the ceiling, and as we move those objects, the two lines stretch. Let's try that again. And I'll put thin lines on so we can see this detail a bit clearer. And I'll copy the washer from the base, select the washer, click on Copy, choose a suitable base point and an end point, and tidy up my drawing. Here you can see that I can select the lines and drag them into the correct location. I can now unhide the pipes that I hid in a previous exercise. From the View control bar, click on Reveal Hidden Elements, and I'm going to select the pipe that's coming through the detail, and click on Unhide Element. Close the Reveal Hidden Elements button, and we can now see the pipe that we're detailing. Well, I'd actually like my detail to match the size of this pipe. That is, after all, what we're trying to do. So use the same techniques. I'll select the bottom part of this detail and move it. Everything stretches. I'll do the same for the sides. Press and hold the Control key to add lines, then click on Move. And do the same on the other side. Press and hold the Control key and move. This time I'll type in 30 so that it matches the previous. Let's move the detail up slightly. And we're almost done. Our pipe isn't connected to a system, which is one of the reasons it's not showing the rise and fall symbol. We now need to edit the region that shows our pipe drop. Select the region and click on Edit Boundary. I'm going to delete one of these lines, then select the overall arc and click on Rescale. Click the center point of the circle, one of the end points, and then the outer face of the pipe. I'll do the same for this arc, resize, base point, end point, center, and now draw an arc using the start-end radius. There's the start, there's the end, and a tangential radius. Click on Finish. The surplus detail lines can now be deleted. I can hear you asking, why didn't you just scale the pipelines as well? Well, if I had done that, which is a valid way of working if I wanted a standard detail, I wouldn't have been able to tag the pipe. So if the pipe size changes, the tag will too. I can now edit the location of the tag and, using the Annotate tab, place additional notes on the detail so we convey the right amount of information. This error message means that the text has disappeared outside the boundary. If I select the viewport boundary, notice that we have a double line around it. This external line controls what we can see from the text. I can now add leaders and any dimensions that are necessary. There's actually two ways of exporting details. One is to export them to an external Revit file that could almost be used as a details file. The other is to export them as 2D DWGs. In this exercise, we're going to look at both. From the Startup screen, click on Open, browse to your Chapter 17 folder, and open Chapter 17 Exporting Details. From your project browser, scroll down until you find Fire Protection, Sections, and then call out Corridor 328. From the Application button, click on Export and go to CAD Formats, DWG. While we're here, you can see that we can also export to DXF, Microsoft DGN, or ASYS. ASYS would not be appropriate for this exercise as ASYS files contain three-dimensional geometry. So let's click on DWG. Revit now asks me what I want to export. In this exercise, I'm just going for an in-session export, the current view only, which is my section, and let's click on Next. I'm now given the option on where to save my drawing file to, and its drawing name, and what file type. Here you can see I can specify the different versions of AutoCAD. Do I want a long name or a short name? You can see here that the short name matches my section. Click on OK. In this instance, Revit has exported three files: the section, a PCP file, and another section, which is the callout of the architectural file. Opening the drawing in AutoCAD shows us that we have successfully exported the DWG. The other option we have is to save this view to a new file. If we do this with this particular view, we will save not only the 2D elements, but also the 3D elements, as Revit is recreating the view for you, but in another file. We can either do that from the Application button, Save As, Library, View, or we can scroll down to our view in the project browser, right-click on the view, and click on Save to New File. In this instance, I'm going to browse to Chapter 17 and save the file. If I now go to open that file, there we have callout Corridor 328. It's a fairly small file, and if I click on Open, that's the only view in the project, apart from the section that defines it. The Legend tool can be used for, well, just about almost anything, from what you'd normally expect as a legend, that is a graphical representation of some of your symbols, to a set of notes that you place on drawings. So for this exercise, and from your Startup screen, click on Open, browse to your Chapter 17 folder, and open the file Chapter 17 Legends. Legends, like any other views, can be found in the project browser. You can see that there are already some predefined in this project. For this exercise, I want to create a new one. Click on your View tab, click on Legends, and create a legend. At this point, we need to give it a name. Let's call this Graphical Damper Schedule, and we'll maintain the scale at 1 to 50. Click on OK. At this point, Revit has created a brand new view. Here you can see it in the project browser. This view has no boundaries. You can see from the View control bar that we cannot crop its boundary. Wherever we place something is where the drawing will be, which sometimes sounds a bit kind of hard, especially when you're coming from a more regimented CAD program where you're actually dealing with coordinates. In legend views and drafting views, you're quite simply not. But to help you, you can show what is called the work plane. From the Systems tab, click on Show Work Plane. This gives you a sort of grid to which you can work to. If I select it, we can change the spacing of the grid, just so that it helps us lay our legend out. It's non-printing. So, to develop our damper schedule, we need to go to the Annotate tab. and from Component, select Legend Component. From the Options bar, we can select the type of damper that we want to select. These have all been loaded into the project and are currently in use. Now this doesn't very much look like a circular volume control damper. This view still behaves in a very similar manner to the rest of the plans, sections and elevations. We have a level of detail, so I'm going to change this to medium. If I place that again, you can see that we have the same type of representation that we would do in a regular plan. Let's delete the first one. I'd also like to see a sectional representation of my damper, so I'm going to copy it, say 600mm, and with this one selected, I'm going to change its view to left. Let's just move it down so that it's in line with the top view. I can now place some descriptive text alongside. Click back on the Annotate tab, click on Text. I'm going to use 2.5mm text and place the start point for my text. Let's give it some descriptive text, volume control damper, round, and zoom out. So what do I need to do for the rest? Well, I could go and place them all exactly the same way as I've done already. But as I've said many times before, I'm a little bit work shy. So I'm going to select them and use the Array tool. Let's array these through 500. And we'll make 6 copies. Now I've just realised that the spacing isn't quite good enough. So let's select the first array group and move it. And I'll move it 150. That's now respaced them all, and I'm happy with that. First thing I'll do here is select them all and ungroup them. Now I can select each group in turn. Notice how it still picks up the name of the family, but not the view type. And we'll change this one to rectangular. All I need to do now is change the text, and so on. Select the two, and change them for a round smoke damper. Change the text. You'll notice that some of these symbols may start moving around a little bit. That's because they're not defined quite in the same way as regular symbols. So all I need to do with these is drag them back into the right location. Let's continue on. Select the next two. Change their type, fire damper rectangular, and change the text. Fire damper rectangular, and drag to position. Let's carry on with the final two. Here's an opposed blade damper, rectangular, and a balancing damper. We can drag these into the correct position as before, and then go back to the Annotate tab, select Text. We'll select the 5mm text and give our legend a title, Damper Schedule. With that complete, we can click back on the Systems tab, turn off the Show Workplane, and we're ready to place this on a sheet. If we found that our text string is too long, we can select the text so that it becomes 2 lines.